Hello, my name is Abraham Lincoln. You may know me as the 16th President of the United States. Well, I am here today to take you to a place known as ancient Mali. Now, I unfortunately never got to visit ancient Mali, so we're going to do this together. Let's see what we can find out. Well, ancient Mali was a powerful empire. And as you can see from these maps, it was located on the continent of Africa, just like another empire that I know you've learned about, ancient China. You can see from these maps that it is located in the western part of Africa. Well, the civilization of ancient Mali was founded along the banks of the Niger River. And Mali is also located in the Sahara Desert. And if you remember, the Sahara Desert is it's actually the largest hot desert in the world. So it is something that they definitely had to make some adaptations to be able to live there. Now, we know that many times civilizations begin on the banks of rivers because there is fish there, there's water, there are nutrients in the soil. It's very important that a river be located near where the civilization is going to be founded. Well, one of the reasons that ancient Mali became powerful and prosperous was because they were located on a trade route between the salt mines of the Sahara Desert and the gold mines found in West Africa. And so caravans, you notice here in this picture, there is a caravan of camels. Camels are uniquely adapted to be able to travel through the desert. But caravans would travel from the salt mines where they would go and gather salt, which is an important nutrient that people need to live. And they would travel back through Mali on their way to the gold mines. And then the gold miners would also travel back and forth. And so Mali became very rich and very powerful, very prosperous because of where they were located. The civilization of Mali made many contributions to the world, and even some to the way that we live our lives today. The civilization, like I said, the civilization of ancient Mali made many contributions to the world. These contributions include their economy, their form of government, a very large and important city, which we will talk about here momentarily, and a form of storytelling, which is very important to the Malian culture. So let's talk first about their economy. And the economy of ancient Mali was based on the trade of salt and gold. Now, there were salt mines in the Sahara Desert, and if you notice here in this picture, you'll see some people that are mining for salt. We often think of salt as being those little cubes that you sprinkle on your food, but salt actually comes in very large slabs, and it is actually quite valuable. It's very important for people to have salt to preserve their food and to help them from becoming dehydrated, especially in the heat of the desert. There were also gold mines in West Africa, and so people would go and they would dig deep into the earth to find the gold because it is a very valuable mineral. It's a very valuable metal. People like to make jewelry out of it and different things along those lines, different things like that. So gold is very valuable as well. And so they became, like we said before, they became rich and prosperous by trading in gold and salt. The civilization of ancient Mali was ruled not by a president like our country, not even by a senate or anything like that. It's actually ruled by a powerful king. And there were two well-known kings in ancient Mali. One of them was the founding king. His name was Sundiata. And you can see here On this picture here, he is riding a horse and carrying a spear. Sundiata had a nickname. He was known as the Lion King. And if you're familiar at all with that movie, I've never got to see it because it came out long after I was no longer around. But if you're familiar with that story, it is very similar to the real life story of Sundiata. Well, after Sundiata was no longer the king, another king took his place, and his name was Mansa Musa, and he was one of the greatest kings in Mali. He founded a city, which we'll talk about next, called Timbuktu. And in that city, there were many things that are important to today. Speaking of Timbuktu, let's take a look. You can see here it was quite a large and powerful city. One of the largest cities in Mali was Timbuktu. And Timbuktu was founded by Mansa Musa because he wanted to leave a legacy, not just of power, but of learning. And in Timbuktu, there was a gigantic library. In fact, many books that we have today that come from ancient Rome and ancient Greece were found in the library in Timbuktu. And we wouldn't have those books if it were not for Mansa Musa and this library. Not only that, but in the city there were more than 170 schools, and there were 2 universities. People came from all over the world to study at Timbuktu. Unfortunately, after Mansa Musa passed away, when he was no longer the king, the kings that came after him were not quite as powerful as Mansa Musa, and so Timbuktu was actually destroyed. Well, one of the most important people, and the reason that we know much of this, one of the most important people in ancient Mali was the Griot. And a Griot was a storyteller. Not just a storyteller like your teacher might be a storyteller, but the Griot were the ones who were responsible for keeping track of the history of the civilization. And they became very powerful because they knew all of the history. And so the kings and the queens would often rely on the Griot to help them make decisions. And so like I said, one of the most important people, one of the best advisors to the king or the queen were the Griot. And in fact, even in Mali, which is still a civilization today in Africa, it's a country in Africa, there are Griot there today who still are responsible for telling the nation's stories. Well, thank you for visiting with me, Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, and our trip to ancient Mali to look at some important aspects of it. I hope you have learned a great deal, and maybe one day you might even be able to visit.